In our last video, we went through trolling as it was in a very early VRChat to uncover where and how it all began. We went through the culture, its creators, and the systems in place that allowed it to flourish. In that entry, we determined how all these systems would end up forming together to create the perfect environment for instability. In this entry on our journey through the history of VRChat trolling, we look beyond the early years and into the modern era. An era that would be packed with further chaos, but also global news and some of the most intense controversies on the internet of the 21st century. To truly start off this entry, we choose to go back to March 11th, 2020. This day would mark the day that the World Health Organization would declare coronavirus, or COVID-19, a quote, global pandemic. However, this does not mean everyone is forced to stay inside, yet. It simply means the virus is spreading to far larger areas and is crossing international borders. Recommendations to keep everyone inside came quickly. However, it did not come instantly. And it wasn't until the latter half of March that many nations would advise their citizens to remain indoors wherever and whenever possible. Unless you're buying toilet paper, of course.
That's exactly what most Americans are doing, with toilet paper sales up more than 100% from this time last year.
Now that we understand the timeline of COVID, let's shift our attention back to around 1 year earlier. A far more quiet time. 2019 is the year that I personally like to call the recovery era. Now, why do I call it the recovery era, you may be asking, my fellow viewers? Well, simply put, the reason is because it is the era that immediately follows the Ugandan Knuckles era, and it's right before COVID-19, which is an era that in of itself would see large amounts of growth. We went more in depth about it in a previous video, but allow me to summarize the Ugandan Knuckles era like this.
Do you know the way?
I know the way.
To know the way, you need to have Ebola.
So, that right there concludes the recap of last video. Please do watch it for a better understanding of today's video, as it includes a lot of information that is very important to today's video. But anyways, let's move on. COVID-19 takes the world by storm. And like mentioned before, by late March, many major nations would advise their citizens to, like we said before, remain indoors whenever necessary. While it wasn't necessarily illegal to go outside, it was still highly recommended by most of the world's governments that you should remain indoors. And it wouldn't be long for those governments to give out their reports on the use of electronics and media during this period, especially for kids. This article by my home country, also known as Canada, reports that over 90% of children from the ages of 12 to 19 would report longer screen time usage and apparently lower odds of reducing alcohol consumption. Interesting. This report by the National Library of Medicine in the US would report, quote, the onset of COVID-19 coincided with the peak of growth of video game usage, with 2.7 billion gamers in 2020. And the stock market was doing great at this time, and then it was actually doing great. And in VRChat, they would report a second spike in player accounts in the months of March and April. Let's dive into that, shall we? After 4 minutes and 40 seconds. God damn, this video is gonna be long. The numbers you currently see on screen now are the player count growth numbers of March and April. This increase in players would unsurprisingly also bring in
Oh, cool.
Hi, my name is Tom, the Shade Eater Pearl, and I'm gonna eat some shit for you.
Could you like
First, I'm gonna
dirty faggot?
piss in a glass so I can have
What's up,
something to
ladies?
wash that delicious shit down with.
funny
Yo, it's
individuals. You see, as people were brought indoors, people were forced to turn to the safe and very inclusive internet.
Yeah, where's the at?
Oh my god. For not only entertainment, like video games and movies, but also talking to people, socialization.
Elon Musk and a turtle. Never thought I've seen that before.
me a turtle. I messed Uruguay.
I don't see you wearing it.
You are rude, young man.
As mentioned before, VRChat wouldn't be left out of this party either, with major growth in player counts leading to an increase in trollers alongside it. This Reddit thread on r/VRChat titled Toxic Trolling states how the game is becoming increasingly racist, and how even after blocking the perpetrators, this guy still finds ways to be harassed. And there's another comment by someone else confirming that they too would experience a similar thing, stating, quote, "As a black woman that's been playing VRChat for 2 years, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I am sorry. Best thing to do is block them. I'm unfortunately unsure if there's a way to report them specifically for racist behavior, or if it even get enforced, to be honest." Another user would also say, quote, "Don't stick to private worlds. The shift lately of public worlds becoming more and more dead is making the game anti-social, highlighting the game's currently still ongoing private instance crisis, as I like to call it, where player count in public worlds is slowly being eaten away due to the game's current community." And if you've been around VRChat long enough, and by long enough I mean longer than, I don't know, 2 weeks, I think you could understand why.
I hate Nick.
Now, let's fast forward to the days following Christmas in December of 2020. Just over 2 months ago, the Oculus Quest 2 would release at a super cheap $300 compared to the $400 for the Quest 1, which released a few years prior. Despite this lower price tag, it is pretty much better in every single way, especially in performance, which in a game like VRChat is desperately needed. People who've played this game can testify to this. Now, this super low price tag made VR accessible to pretty much any young toddler wishing to experience the wild and diverse world of virtual reality. Realize how I said kids? Yeah, I meant kids.
I love how every time I play this game, it's just an instant free content farm. It's insane.
Especially kids below the age of 14. Following the release of the Quest 2, kids flood into every corner of VR, and while yes, it wasn't just kids who bought the Quest 2, it created a clear and easy opening for children to find their way in. The problem with kids is that they're just simply not funny. In fact, most of the time, they're actually very annoying to deal with. I don't think I'm crazy for saying that. And VRChat would make the Capitaine Jean-Luc Picard type wise decision to release the game on Quest 2. Now, what I realize about many creators who make documentaries on VRChat is they don't really mention that VRChat didn't really have a choice. Long story short, VR had become a big market at this point and has been a big market for the past 2 years. And choosing not to port it would have been a foolish business mistake, as they would potentially have another Rec Room situation where they couldn't get enough money to actually run their games. But anyways, now we have kids going around thinking the N-word is funny. Did I mention that furry hate was starting to become popular again around this time? Hypnotist Sappho was a decently large creator for her niche, with her niche consisting of teaching and performing hypnotism, or hypnosis, as well as therapy. Whether these were even successful, I have no idea. She was also a furry, and would be very active in the furry community. In late September, however, she would post a video admitting she was a zoophile.
And say that, for the record, I am a zoophile.
Now, for those who don't know what a zoophile is, which I guarantee is like maybe 10% of you, let me explain it. Zoophilia is essentially having sexual attractions to animals. Yeah, If you're actually a zoophile, I think you should probably find God and maybe like your nearest adoption center. The community was, let's just say, less than thrilled. And since she was a furry, and not only a furry, but a highly visible one at that many in the community knew, many people who didn't know much about furries before this news began associating the broader furry community with this behavior. And the furry community would say time and time again that they do not support this type of behavior, because they don't. And that's the thing that many people got wrong at this time. Furries are not animal fuckers. They're not. And they too find this behavior disgusting, as they should. However, the internet never really heard this side of the story, or never really cared, as this would end up causing yet another cycle of trolling against the furry community, which had previously cooled down in the years of like 2017, leading to trollers to go on the offensive again. But now, some with the thought that they were doing the right thing, which would lead to what I like to call the second furry war, with 2017 being the first, of which this war is still going on to this very day, though at a much smaller scale. In case you didn't know, EAC stands for Easy Anti-Cheat, or Anti-Cheat. Back in mid-2022, VRChat announced on July 25th that they are rolling out EAC to tackle the game's ongoing client problems. The system officially went live the very next day on July 26th. So allow me to explain what EAC actually does. For pretty much all of VRChat's life, plugins and custom clients were pretty much everywhere. Most people would end up using them. Many regular users relied on them to fix lag, add avatar search bars, enable full body tracking, boost performance, and many more. But of course, as we all know, if you give people the ability to add features into a game with a plugin, it's gonna allow people to make pretty bad things. Clients weren't just being used as helpful tools, they're being used as a playground playset for trolls. Crashers use techniques like avatar bloating, where someone packs an absurd amount of data into a single avatar to crash your game, and there's also network packet flooding, which sends huge amounts of data to someone else's game, very similar to a DDoS attack. Some psychopaths even found ways to bypass safety systems, like the feature that hides avatars you'd rather not see, removing a very important layer of protection that basically made it so that no one was safe no matter what you did. And this wasn't a one-off problem either. It had been going on for years at this point, and that's where Easy Anti-Cheat came in. Its goal was to stop trolls by blocking players from modifying core game files, graphics, features, and so on. But the problem was, it didn't just affect trolls, it hit everyone else along with it, including those who needed plugins to actually play the game. What made everything worse was the timing. The change was announced on July 25th, and remember, they said the change would go live the next day on July 26th, leaving people completely unprepared. Because there was no build up to this announcement either. One morning, they knew their time was up, and as such, trolls saw this as their last chance and rushed to wreak as much havoc as possible before the deadline. The result? Yet another massive wave of trolling. At least the third one by this point. And the fallout? Both trolls and regular users were upset. People who relied on plugins were frustrated, and trolls were angry their usual tricks were blocked. Somehow, some fucking way, VRChat managed to get two communities that hate each other to death to agree on something. Possibly the first time in history that this has ever happened. I can't think of a single other thing that the VRChat community has ever agreed on. That EAC was terrible. Mission accomplished, I guess. This unsurprisingly would go down in history as perhaps VRChat's biggest mistake. We've looked at a lot of moments that shaped VRChat's history. Events that changed the game, changed the community, and changed the way people interacted with each other. But few had an impact as massive and as damaging as the EAC crisis. The goal was simple: make VRChat a safer place. But the reality turned out to be far more complicated. Instead of solving the conflict between trolls and regular players, the update ended up frustrating both sides in a way that allowed them to rally with each other. And if there's one thing the trolling community had proven by this point, through all of these trials, is that they're incredibly adaptable. For 5 years, trolling had been a major problem across the platform. The trolls' objective had always been simple: get reactions, create chaos, and the trolling community didn't disappear. They adapted. As client-based trolling became harder, they shifted to new tactics, new exploits, new ways to get the reactions they wanted. And through that ability, through that sheer determination to adapt, survive, and most importantly to evolve, they achieved something that few people thought possible. The VRChat civil war did not end with the trolling community's destruction or collapse. It ended with their survival. And in a war where every attempt to stop them only forced them to change, survival alone was enough to claim a decisive, though ever costly, victory. The VRChat civil war was over, and the trolls have won.